Hey guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. I'm Jazz Marie, aka Vevna Forrow. So, previously on the podcast, I was sharing with you some of the telltale signs on whether a lit mag or journal is, legit or not, or, some of the, sort of red flags, warning signs you should be aware of as a submitter, and also things founding editors should, really keep in mind when they are right? Creating their lit mag or journal, right? The structure of it and things that submitters typically don't like to see, right? So, yeah, you can listen back to that scam identification episode. Again, most of the episodes, not all, they do have some sort of a list or article that I, type out to. So if you're not a fan of solely podcast episodes or audio or listening to my voice all the time, totally you can, check those out too. I've gone back and linked through some of the episodes, some of those as well. And yeah, I'll try and create more when time allows. So yeah, so you may see on my screen if you're watching out on Spotify, YouTube or elsewhere, right? I am on Christmas spirits today. Yes. So I was just wondering, are there any lit mags and journals out there that, I could cover maybe for the holiday season, right? Because again, it's really cool that lit mags, journals, presses, even, right, can focus on some really fun things, right? And yeah, so I was searching online. This was just like the first Google search I did. I was like Christmas lit mags, right, in my search. And what showed up was Christmas spirits, right? So if you go out to chill subs though, they're not listed in there quite yet. Of course, anyone can put a suggested listing in there and then, chill subs can, you know, uh, you know, pull it in or, plug it in here for that or, yeah. Anyways, so if we type Christmas, right, nothing pulls up here. But there are again, absolutely, some holiday, season calls across lit mags and journals around this time, aside from, Christmas spirits and things like that, right? Publications like that. Yeah. So, anyways, just know again, Chillsubs doesn't have all the listings in existence, around the world, but it is still a really great place to find, calls, contests, presses, even, and yeah, and publications. So let's go back to Christmas Spirit's site. And yeah, I don't believe they're open right now at this very moment. But that doesn't mean I can't share it with you guys because I think it's cool to check out different lit mags and journals to see what they're about, right? And yeah, so essentially, right, Christmas Spirits focuses on holiday ghost stories, right? They're a holiday ghost story literary magazine, right? And yeah, holiday ghost. I don't know how many of you guys are into ghost stories or things like that. Obviously, on the podcast, right, the Halloween months around that time or a little bit before around that this year, right? I was covering a couple lit mag journals and presses out there that focus more so on horror or maybe their name sometimes has like something horror in their name, like ghost, right? But they don't necessarily publish nothing but ghost poetry or stories or anything like that, right? So yeah, but absolutely, there are some, that really tie into their name and everything around that, So yeah, let's dive into Christmas spirits here and let's take a look at it, right? So, yeah, we can see here on their main page, right? So it states telling ghost stories in the chilly darkness by firelight is a celebrated winter holiday tradition that's ready for a resurrection. Explore the haunted side of the holidays in this anthology. So they have volume one, it looks like, but they also have, I believe, volume two. It's just not, I think, plugged in on their site, So let's go out there. It looks like they have it on Book Baby, and yeah. So, yeah, it looks like paperback's $20. That's not too bad at all, And yeah, on Book Baby, and you can see here in the overview, right? It states Christmas Spirits is a darkly whimsical literary magazine featuring 11 original stories by different authors, each beautifully illustrated. These tales harken back to the Victorian custom of telling ghost stories at Christmas, but offer a modern take on a tradition that is ripe for revival. So yeah, that's awesome, right? It says here, I'm quoting this off the description. Welcome to this festive gathering. Everyone's been invited, even the dead. New ghostly creatures, some frightening, some witty, some fiendishly both, await you in this first volume of Christmas Spirits, a literary journal for seasonal ghost stories. These original tales and beautiful illustrations suitable for consumption by firelight with a steaming beverage of ward off the chill serves as your personal invitation to wander beyond the veil, linger in cold spots, and confront the darkest aspects of winter. Now you must be brave enough to open it. So yeah, I think that's cool. It says exactly, how many authors are in it. We can see the pages. It's 108 pages, and it looks like they have an ISBN and everything. So that's cool. I think you can also view the back cover. Let's take a look at it. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah. And yeah, so they do have, if you scroll down further on Book Baby, right, they have volume two, and that's paperback, right? So yeah, it looks like here it's about the same, I think, page. So that volume one was 108 pages, and we go into volume two, right? Which, if you scroll down, it shows up there, right? So it's 104 pages, volume two, and yeah. So again, you can see it's consistent, right? They're featuring, right, 11, it looks like, original stories by different authors, and then they have each one beautifully illustrated. So that's really cool. Yeah, so the overview of this one, or the description rather, of this one, right? I'm going to quote off the description for you guys. Winter brings us the longest, darkest part of the year. Some believe the veil between the living and the dead thins. We turn to ritual to welcome in or ward away these spirits. For generations, winter meant scarcity, loss, and fear for what or who we might lose before the next thaw. And it states here, this year they were wonderfully overwhelmed with submissions. Many stories carried the same ancestral weight, fear of what might be taken, lost, or never known, fear of what we might become in the tides of uncertainty and reckoning. One theme that especially stood out: stories that grapple with what it feels like to be a woman, especially now, woman facing impossible circumstance, sometimes succeeding spectacularly or viciously. Others remained trapped or became captors themselves. They included several of those voices in this year's volume. It says, and ghost stories offer fear, but also comfort. They let others hold fear in their hands, give it a name, master it, and dispel it. The best stories may also haunt us in their own powerful ways. They remind us that we're not alone in the dark. That's why they said they're excited to share these stories with you. So yeah, I think that's great that they emphasize that in the description, right? Yeah, ghost stories, right, are typically on the, like, scary side and fearful side. But I think, some people, just reading in general, right? Not necessarily always ghost stories, but reading in general too, it offers comfort. And yeah. And again, I think there are absolutely some really stellar, really vivid ghost stories, that I've read over the years and stuff. I shared in this podcast, right? Growing up, I was, someone who, from time to time, read Goosebumps and things like that, and even see the mini. They had a series, spin-off series on TV or something with them too, and the movie, right? And I've seen those. And yeah, the older ones, not the newer one. I think they did. I wasn't a huge fan of the latest series tied to Goosebumps, but I did like the movie of Jack Black, and then the older TV miniseries episodes they did, I believe, tie back to the books. And then, yeah, I'm sure, we're all from Ghostbusters, right? So yeah, I used to watch that quite a bit, growing up. And yeah, I've seen the reboots of those too, pretty LOL. But in general, right? I think that's great. They said that, right? That stories can be haunting and powerful, and also, again, communicate, again, as I said, not just stories, but writing in general, poetry, and art, right, can communicate some really beautiful messages, meanings, and I think that whole aspect of, they said, we're not alone in the dark, that togetherness, right? Collective stories, and it can be very powerful. So I haven't read it, but it sounds pretty cool, what they're doing at Christmas Spirit. I just wanted to share it with you guys. They have two volumes out, it looks like, yeah. And yeah. So if we go back to their website here, right, they're not open at this very moment. They have their submission guidelines. Let's take a look at it, right? So you can see they were open 2025, right? And yeah, so Christmas Spirits is seeking previously unpublished ghost stories suitable for sharing around a fire during holiday celebrations. These ghost stories can be set during the winter holidays, or framed by them. They're looking for stories with a ghostly aesthetic, cobwebs tangled with tinsel, atmospheric scares, winter chills of the spectral kind. They are also seeking artists to illustrate companion pieces to selected stories. It states, do not submit AI generated manuscripts or AI generated art. So they have their AI policy there. So they just haven't gotten around, I think, to updating this. So they're not open for submissions right now, I don't believe, based on their social media, what was listed there. And they, just released, right, their inaugural issue, and they did volume two. They have volume one and volume two out. So it looks like, the last deadline they had up was March 15th, 2025. So yeah, I think, once a deadline closes, sometimes a lot of events happen in the year, and lit magazine journals, they, eventually get around to updating their next call window, or the when it opens up, right? So I'm not sure when Christmas Spirits opens up, but that's just my only thing. I think it'd be nice to know, like a message, stay tuned, we're going to open in 2026 or something. But if you go out to their social media feed, you can see that Christmas Spirits, right, the founding editor, I believe it's a husband and wife team behind this. If we go to the about section real quick, and we'll go back there. So yeah, if we scroll down, right, again, it reiterates Christmas Spirits is a literary magazine featuring holiday ghost stories. And yeah, so it says, ever since they were promised the most wonderful time of the year would include scary ghost stories, they wanted to hear them. So the editor, right, is Nicole, I apologize for mispronouncing the last name, Levine or Levine. And yeah, a writer and editor living in Southern California. And yeah, and you can see Jeff as well, is the art director. Jeff Levine, or Jeff Levine, is an artist and designer from Southern California. And yeah, so I think that's awesome, right? So it looks like we have a husband and wife team, right? And based on their bios, and yeah, I think that's really cool to see. Some lit magazine journals, I think, are, just founded, by one editor, but I think it's nice to see that, uh, lit magazine journals that, again, I've shared some on this podcast, were founded by, a husband and wife, or, partners in life, and even, a group of friends, or family, right? I think that's really cool to see, that, it's hard writing a publication by yourself. So I think it's nice, when you see others, like, oh, they're a family run, maybe lit mag and journal. I've seen some, out there, and I think that's really cool to see, too. And yeah, so Nicole, again, is the editor, and then it looks like Jeff does the art, right? In terms of art directing and reviewing maybe the art submissions, and more so, right? Is what I'm thinking. And yeah, so let's go back to the submission guidelines here. So again, right, so this isn't current, but yeah, I have seen activity just like on their social media feed, though, from November. So something that, that Christmas Spirits, I think, does, that's really nice to see. They attend various events throughout the year, booth events, table events, where you can share publications, share, things of that nature, right? I think that's really cool. I think most are aware of AWP, right? And some table events that are, fairly well known. But there are, if you look locally, like where you are as a Lit Mag Journal founding editor, or even, there are some really cool, events across the world, right? Table events, and, festivals, fairs, even, where you can get a table. And, some of those events have fees. Typically, most of them do, to, set up a table and stuff. But I think it's a great way to get, publications in the hands of more readers and things like that, right? So yeah, I personally haven't done any table events myself, but, with CLMP, we got the opportunity to, share things at the, Brooklyn Book Festival, right? And things like that. But I have an image up from their social media feed, Christmas Spirits, actually, on one of their booth events. So this is really cool what they do, Christmas Spirits, and this was from August, I believe, the Midsummer Scream event, and they've attended quite a few events to share the volumes, which I think is really nice to see. So they really go all out to really share it. And I think some other ones they attended, right? Seaside Oddities, some various fairs, festivals, and table events. So it's a really cool booth they have, and table events that they attend throughout the year, it looks like, actively. And yeah, so if you go on their social media feed, they have posts and shares from the events they do. And yeah, so they may not be open at the moment right now, and their site may not, have the next call window open or anything like that. But I think it's really nice to see some lit magazine journals, going the extra mile to do these table events and things like that, to set up and share the volumes and the issue releases, right? I think that's really cool to see. So yeah, again, you can see the crow, right? And then yeah, so Christmas spirits, the banner, and yeah, I think the cover art's really cool that they have. And yeah, I haven't picked up the issues, but I think illustrated publications or any that have art in them are pretty cool in general. Of course, you guys know I think that's awesome, and I love, traditional art. So I love that they really strive for that, and that's their focus too. So yeah, so unfortunately not open right now, it appears like, but maybe check, it's one place to maybe make a pit stop and see and monitor when their next open window is. Always a good idea, to follow a place you're interested on social media. I think they have an Instagram. It's not linked out on their website though, but they do have one. So I was just looking at it, and it's active, throughout this year it was. And just last November, they made a post, not too long ago, right? Like I think it was like last week, or yeah, or a week or two ago. So here's their guidelines here, very straightforward, right? So word count limit, ideal lengths for stories would fall between 1,000 and 5,000 words. Flash fiction and poetry are welcome. Simultaneous submissions are welcome, but it says please notify them promptly if your work is accepted for publication elsewhere. Content guidelines. So they're looking for works that would fall within the ghost story genre, not simply horror. The setting should evoke winter. Bonus points if your story touches on themes associated with winter holidays, death, rebirth, renewal. In addition to Christmas, other winter holidays may be included. It says that your work may be selected to be paired with an artist to create a suitable illustration for the publication at the publisher's discretion. So compensation. So this is what's really cool. They actually do pay writers their work, and that's really awesome to see. So it says all published authors will receive a copy of the publication in which their work appears. Writers will be paid $50 per work that appears in the printed magazine. So it has here the structure they want to see in your file name, right? Your author name, work title. Not every place does this. Some places do conceal identifying information, or cover letters with submission management systems, things like that. But it looks like they're okay with that, knowing the author name, work title to keep track of it and stuff, since I think they're doing submissions via email. It says, please be certain your manuscript also includes the following elements: your name, your pen name if you wish to use one, address, email, phone number on the first page, contact deets, page numbers, a short third-person biography of yourself that is 100 words or less, a short introductory email including a blurb describing your submitted work, double-spaced in 12-point font. And then they have the copyright information here. So again, Christmas Spirits will have an irrevocable worldwide license to publish your work in print and online for 5 years from the date of first publication. Such license is exclusive for the first year after first publication and non-exclusive thereafter. This may include publication in a best of or other compilation. Christmas Spirits will have the right to apply for copyrights in magazines that may contain the creator's work. Copyright to the creator's work is retained by each respective creator of the work at all times, and creators are responsible for applying for their own copyright rights. Authors are free to enter into other license of their work after the first year after first publication. So yeah, it looks like, you have to wait a year before, you can, do anything further with your work that was accepted through them. That's what I'm getting the gist of it. And yeah, of course, writers retain rights to their work. And yeah, I think, yeah, not everyone's a fan of, those exclusivity policies. And yeah, but, I think, if a place wants to be the first place a story's been read and things like that, or even, with other publications, I'm sharing this podcast, poem or essay or, things of that nature, right? Yeah, exclusivity agreements, I've seen them from time to time, right? We've covered this on just a couple episodes back. One place had 3 months, some places have 6 months, exclusivity or a full year. And then they have a dedicated submissions email, right? Yeah, only to be used, of course, when they're open. They're not open right now at this very moment, but, totally check back, maybe later on, maybe the following year. Yeah, and just monitor that. They don't have a chill subs listing quite yet. I don't think they're on Duotrope unless I missed it, but they are on CLMP, which is nice to see. Yeah, they have a CLMP listing here. Again, you can see they were founded in 2024, and it's showing Upland, California. So yeah, and yeah, so they don't charge a submission fee or reading fee at all. And yeah, so that's really great to see. So if we go back to the website here, so they do also pay artists, which is also awesome, right? So they're paying writers and artists. So all published artists will receive a copy of the publication in which their work appears. So they're giving, copies to, artists too. That's really cool. In terms of, yeah, writers also, right? Writers get a copy and artists. So they're giving contributor copies, which is not easy to do. Yeah, so um, all published artists receive a copy of the publication in which their work appears. Artists and writers will be paid $50 per work that appears in the printed magazine, and all decision regarding the use of artist work is at the publisher's discretion. And again, yeah, basically same thing applies with artwork, right? That copyright notice and information, right, tied to, right, the year, right, first year. I mean, so artists are free to enter into other license of their work after the first year after first publication, right? Yeah. So yeah, some lit magazine journals do have you sign agreements or things like that. Not all, but yeah, you should always be aware of that and read carefully. Not all writers and artists like exclusivity agreements, but I think 3 months, 6 months, it's not too bad. A year it's not too bad. I think if anyone has some exclusive agreement that's like what for all eternity, or like 3 to 5 years, I think that's a bit much. That's way, anything beyond a year, I think is like, nah, I wouldn't do anything like that myself. But yeah, I think that's okay. Some places do have exclusive agreements, and yeah, again, after an exclusive agreement, or after that time has passed, right, it's always appropriate, right, to credit the first place it appeared, right, in publication, or volume or issue of a series, right. So yeah, yeah, so it looks like they have contact information, everything's visible, their guidelines are pretty straightforward and clear, right? Very bite-sized and straightforward. The only thing I would say, it'd be nice to know their, next upcoming windows or what's ahead. They have a blog, an invitation post, but I think it'd be nice if they had an update on the, not just, it has by volume one here, but, also volume two is available. So I think if someone came across it, to be like, there's one volume, but there's actually two if you look on the Book Baby site, right? And yeah, anyways, I think the site layout, everything's easy to find. Sometimes it takes time for, lit magazine journals to update things after volume releases. And it looks like Christmas Spirits, they do attend quite a lot of events, across the year. So that's a lot of work, and it's hard to do that and, keep things updated. But, I think they do a good job from what I've seen. I think that's nice. The table events, especially, love to mention illustrated work inside the volumes, right? I think that's really cool. And the cover art, it looks really nice too, right? And yeah, so I think that's really awesome. Yeah. And yeah, so um in terms of the about section, yeah, it's nice to have the founding date, right, of a lit mag journal. The bios are there, it's clear, who the editors are, they have their photos and everything. So that's nice to see, and yeah. So I'm sure, over time, perhaps still, some years are busier than others for lit mags and journals, and sometimes it takes time to circle back and update things. But yeah, I think it'd just be nice to have again the when the next window is, or to state, they're closed at the time, but they'll be back open 2026 or something like that. For their next call window. So it's one to check out and see, maybe for 2026, or I don't know what exactly they're going to open up again here, but just sharing that Christmas Spirits exist, and check out their volumes, volume one, volume two, right? Both look really cool. So yeah, again, on Book Baby, it looks like, right, and they have it linked out here, and yeah, so I think that's pretty cool. I would say again, I'm not huge on. I share movie recs on this podcast, right, and stuff like that. So I would say I'm not huge on Christmas horror movies, guys, but I've seen my fair share, right? I'm sure everyone's aware of Christmas Carol, Jim Carrey, right? And even The Grinch, right? I think that was one I watched quite a lot, growing up, right? I'm not talking about the animated one. I'm talking about like the one with Jim Carrey, and then yeah, I think one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies, just comedy ones in general, was the one with Will Ferrell, Elf, right? 2003. That's probably one of my all-time faves. And yeah, around the holidays, I don't know, for some reason I would always watch, Faulty Towers. It was always a classic old series, with John Cleese. I didn't particularly like one episode, like one scene of it, but I think, for the most part, it was something that always used to cheer me up watching Faulty Towers, and I absolutely loved that one. And I think you guys know I'm a huge fan of the 10th Kingdom, right? It's not necessarily holiday focused or anything, not ghost or scary per se or anything like that. But I liked that mini series too. And yeah, so I'm trying to think of anything else. I don't. Well, I guess over the years I've watched some romantic holiday comedies from time to time. I think one of the last ones I saw, or last two that I recall off the top of my head, would be Anna and the Apocalypse. That wasn't really a comedy; it was more of dark horror comedy. I think they were fighting off zombies. She had a candy cane or something. I don't know. It was just on, so I ended up watching it. And then another one I saw on Netflix, I think it was Hot Frosty or something. It was like LOL. But, so just some cheesy comedies, Christmas love story movies and stuff. But I'm not huge on, really gory horror and stuff like that. They're hard to watch scenes. But again, I'm sure you guys are aware of The Conjuring. I've seen all the Conjuring movies and, Paranormal Activity and stuff like that. But yeah. I think I shared it somewhere in this podcast. I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that. But, it's absolutely fun to watch those movies, to read ghost stories. Holiday ghost stories, I think, are really lovely too, and, I don't know. When I was on Christmas Spirits, I was like, yeah, it makes me, when I was reading the description, it was like, yeah, we can all have a cup of hot cocoa, get by a fireplace and, read some holiday ghost stories, right? It's just, I think, when you read, I don't know, the holiday season just makes you feel that way, like you want to just curl up with a book and read something good. It doesn't necessarily, whether it's scary or not, or, of that nature. I think it just helps us to read, stories, right, in general. And again, as Christmas Spirits mentioned, right, you're not alone. And, yeah, I think for some, absolutely right. I share on this podcast personal things too. Some holidays can be tough for others, right? I think personally for me, I never had really like ever large family gatherings or anything like that from both sides of my family together. I think I mentioned that on the podcast. So mostly it's just me and my folks, all the time for the holidays, the past 3 decades of my life, and yeah, sure, there were times I, spent a holiday or some, with my grandparents where I was young, decades ago, but not like regular visits and things like that, or regular gatherings and large family gatherings where, our families, come together, for my mom and dad's side. So it was always kind of, I don't know, that kind of bummed me out, not, it's not, I didn't grow up in an atmosphere where I was constantly around my grandparents, like, heavily. It was more so, that trying to minimize contact actually with my grandparents because of things that happened, between my parents and them and stuff. So it's hard, Yeah, we do stay in touch, we do chat now and then, but not like we used to or anything like that. When I was young, they used to call and regularly check in on me and things like that. But again, I mentioned of my family, right? Unfortunately, there's, things that people never let go, and just some rather, harsh things said, right? That are really hard. But, I absolutely do love the holidays. I think it's a time, it's a festival time, and I love the food around, Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff, and the desserts and snacks. I'm huge on that. I love Christmas desserts and stuff. Yeah, so anyways, I just wanted to share that. And I'm wishing everyone a happy upcoming holidays if you do celebrate. And yeah, and yeah, it's cool, Christmas spirits, I think, overall. And yeah, so I'm just wishing you guys a happy upcoming holidays. And yeah, take care, guys. do check out more Christmas spirits. I'm sure they will get around to, updating their website, a little bit further in terms of the next call window, and maybe adding to the blog, and that they have both volumes out, right? Volume 1 and volume 2. But it's a very straightforward website. They have, one thing I would say, their social media, I don't think was all linked out to their pages. It's mostly just sharing, out to social media, other channels. But yeah, maybe they'll plug that in at some point in time and add more to their website. But I think it's cool. Again, it shows you can create a lit mag journal around anything that really interests you. If you're a fan of, perhaps not holiday ghost stories, but if you like holiday love stories too, right? That could be a thing too that you know, some lit magazine journals, right? They may not necessarily be Christmas themed, or just tacking this on. They may not necessarily be Christmas themed or Halloween themed or anything like that. But from time to time, they hold calls around the seasons or holiday months, right? Where they have windows for that type of work, right? Or that themed subject matter. Like with the lit mag I have, right, Dippy, right, what we did, right, at some point in time, we did this Halloween challenge, right? Others would, right, try to create bite-sized mini poems, right, for, X, or formerly Twitter, right, a size post and like threads, right? And we published that out on social media and share that, right? And it's challenging because it has to be bite sized, right? The character constraints on those platforms. So yeah, from fun things from time to time like that. We haven't done any like, we haven't really kickstarted that up like a lot of or holiday mini challenge calls or anything with Halloween in quite some time. I don't know if we'll do that anytime soon, but anyways, yeah, you can do themed issues from time to time for Litman Journal if you like. You can do anthologies if you want to, Um, you can have a lot of fun, with creating a Litman journal. So just wanted to share Christmas spirits exist. Check them out. Pick up some of their volumes, right? Volume 1, volume 2. If you're someone especially that loves holiday ghost stories, this may be a place to circle back to, right? And see. So yeah, I think it's nice to see that they are, listed on CLMP, and yeah, they are absolutely still active again, on their Instagram feed, and maybe they'll have other channels maybe in the future. But yeah, I think it's really nice again that they attend these booth and table events, and show that they actively go and share the physical issues and volumes. And it looks like they have some other fun things too on their table and booth too, which is cool. Yeah, so I love illustrated publications personally. So I think this is one that sounds really cool. Just reading the description itself, it makes you want to, like, I think they did a good job with that. It makes you want to pick it up. And yeah, they have, a straightforward policy and guidelines, right? No AI generated work, no AI generated art. So traditional art, traditional writing, no made by humans, which is great. And yeah, so I think they have a very cool publication. And don't forget, you guys, yet. So yeah, again, sometimes Lit Magazine Journals sometimes change their payments. They increase it or adjust it over the years. But for right now, it looks like, which is really cool, they pay writers $50 per work that appears in the printed magazine. And again, they pay, right, artist also $50 per, work that appears in a printed magazine. So that's pretty nice. I don't see a lot of places again doing that, but absolutely they're out there. No fee again to submit at all to Christmas spirits, as we see here. So that's pretty cool. They don't have a submission management system. I think it is easier to, manage submissions through that. But, I think it's a cool, again, always a good idea to have, I think for some lit magazine journals, if there's a certain point in the year that, as a founding editor, that you have availability more so than others, you can maybe create a reoccurring window that others always can look out for to submit during that time. And yeah, just in advance, or but yeah, I'm sure they'll update their website eventually. But yeah, looks like they have a pretty cool series here, Christmas Spirits. So totally check it out for the holidays, guys. Just wanted to give a holiday recommendation. I don't know if I'll find any others, in the meantime. This isn't the only episode I'm going to do before the end of 2025, just a heads up. So I'll try to fit in, a couple more if I can. And before I sign off here, just one more thing. I tack on additional thoughts and notes towards the end. So, as I mentioned in, I think, episode 96 with another Lit Mag, and even a couple others on this podcast, right? I think it's always a good idea, though, after, the first two issues come out or launch, or that, some free samples may be published online. Examples of what the publication is looking for are, somewhere on the site of the lit mag or journal, right? It gives, submitters a better idea, before they're submitting what they're looking for a little bit further. But obviously, I think it's pretty straightforward, very clear in their guidelines. But I like to see, at least a couple free samples from, past volumes, that are online and visible. I think, again, yeah. And then just in the guidelines, again, it's awesome that they pay writers and artists for the work. I think it's beneficial to include, how are, the writers and artists paid, like what's the payment method, because not everyone, of course, is able to use the same payment method. It happens from time to time. So it's always a good idea to give a heads up, on the payment system and things like that. Yeah, some submission management systems have some capabilities to streamline that, right, and things like that. And yeah, again, so I mentioned this on the podcast cover. Some that are able to do that, not all. And yeah, so I think those were the additional things I just wanted to mention. And I don't know if the Christmas Spirits nominates for any, events. Like I don't know about that. Some of the nomination events that happen in the, space of, stories, even, and things of that nature. But yeah, I don't know. I think possibly, I don't know. They mentioned a best of series, so I don't know if that was indicating more so like, some of those events, or rather their own, publication series compilation of some kind. I don't know. But yeah, again, don't forget to check out the nomination list I put together of the ones that happen typically year round every year. Sure, some of those nomination events, some that have been around quite some time. I think one of them closed down this year, but there are a lot of other ones out there, free to partake in for founding editors, especially tied to, short stories and, yeah. So totally, check that out again. And yeah, just wanted to tack that on. And a couple more movie recs before I go. I know you're like, how many movie recs are you going to give? Sure, I probably shared some of these somewhere earlier on the podcast, or maybe not actually. So I think growing up, one of my all-time favorite animated, movies in terms of like the ghost realm would have to be Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost from 1999. I always really thought that was a memorable animated movie, right? I myself grew up watching a lot of cartoons and just ended up, loving, doing cartooning, drawing cartoons, over the years, um, especially when I was younger. And I've, saw back then like literally every single Scooby Doo movie in existence, and a spin-off series tied to it. So it was always fun. I remember I had fond memories, like even when I was traveling with my folks on some road trips, right? Anytime I'd see, like, I'm sure some of us have seen it, right? Some cars, or I mean vans or vehicles, right, have actually like converted themselves into like replicas of the Mystery Machine, right? I thought that was so cool. So, yeah, so Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost. The music was awesome. I think I used to sing along to that, and totally. I've sing when I was younger and little, right? I think we've all sang like some Christmas songs and stuff, like Jingle Bell. I've even, when I was in band, and some classes, right? I remember playing some holiday songs too. I wasn't very good at most band instruments besides trombone, and I think I enjoyed bassoon, but didn't really play it too long. But yeah, things like that. And yeah, so Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost, and then another one, Scooby Doo on Zombie Island, right, 1998. Those are probably some of the most memorable ones in terms of like the horror animated, mystery comedy realm. And I mentioned this podcast, right? I've seen the Cube trilogy, right? The first three are probably my fave. I've seen all the Cube movies out there. Those are pretty scary. They're not really ghosts, realm type movie. It's not really that a series, but it was always one of the most memorable, horror, unique concepts, sci-fi wise. I thought was interesting. If you've never seen it, do watch it. I think it's one of my all-time faves. It does have some hard to watch scenes, but I think it was an interesting concept, and the Cube trilogy, and there are others in the series, right? The Cube, and yeah, and I think there was a spin-off in another country that happened. I saw that. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but yeah, it was pretty interesting, especially I think the first two, and yeah. And then I've seen, of course, right. I've seen the Rec series, REC, right? I've seen the international foreign one, and then also the, US version, right? And yeah, those were always pretty creepy to me too. Yeah, in the I think the apartment building, and it was really like, yeah, the end scenes especially was always was pretty creepy, and the airport docking one, right? The yeah, that one. And yeah, anyways, yeah, so just sharing some additional movie recs, not necessarily holiday, ones, but yeah, I think we all have our favorite movies around the holidays, and every year some interesting ones come out. But yeah, I've totally again watched my fair share of like, holiday movies and romantic holiday ones, and Elf is a fave again, and Faulty Towers with a W. It's not spelled how you usually spell Faulty Towers. It's Fawlty. Yeah, that was always one I watched, almost around the holidays every year, and then the Tenth Kingdom, and also always was a huge fan of like any of the older styled Lost World series. There's a I think a BBC version, and I saw some other ones, right? Journey to the Center of the Earth movies types. I like those movies. So yeah, we all have our fave type movies, and not necessarily always Christmas horror movies, but just sharing. So yeah, if you're someone again who really loves seasonal ghost stories or holiday ghost stories, right? Christmas Spirits is probably the place for you to check out. And yeah, totally, pick up their issues or volumes. I don't know if they're going to have, some more samples from back issues posted online. I don't know if they're going to have samples posted online from back issues at some point in time, but nevertheless, again, I think Christmas Spirits is a very cool publication. And again, really cool, again, that they pay writers to work, give contributor copies, and have illustrations even on top of that within the issues. So I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, so just wanted to share that they exist. And yeah, over time, publications evolve, right? Their site maybe, is updated, or um, things of that nature, right? And I've seen some lit magazine journals, just stating this real quick, do some spin-off series from time to time, or sometimes they branch outside of their main focus and do some fun, other calls too, which happens from time to time, um, even online ones, and do a mix between print and online. But I don't know if they'll ever do that, but just sharing, So, anyways, they have some pretty cool volumes. It looks like again, and totally, if you're someone who's interested, as a going to start a lit mag and journal yourself, again, definitely look into some of the table events that you can attend. It's a great way, again, to get the issues into more hands, to make others aware of the series. Of course, there are some, costs to attending table events, fairs, and festivals typically, but not always. Some are fairly reasonable, not, so it depends. I think CLMP, right, the Community of Literary Magazines and Presses, they have a great event section again. They can check out some events that happen, maybe in your state or country, wherever you may be. Internationally, even there's some really amazing events, that others, really, focus on literary arts and, publications and stuff. But totally, there are some wonderful, fairs, festivals, booth table events you can attend in person, share, set up a table and stuff. And yeah, so it's just a matter of cost, I think, for some of those. But I've never really gone to anyone myself or things like that. I think it's always been a goal of mine, maybe one day, to check out a Comic Con event of some kind, but I haven't yet, or anything like that. But yeah, anyways, Christmas Spirits is a pretty cool publication, and once again, I'm wishing you all a very happy upcoming holidays, and yeah, so just doing these in my downtime, and yeah, so take care, guys, and yeah.